Tonight, anti-Muslim graffiti in Calgary. Is that city secretly racist? It's December 4th, and you're watching The Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government for why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
A hate crime in Calgary, anti-Muslim graffiti at a city transit stop. What does it mean? 2 elections in a row, Calgarians voted for a Muslim mayor. But are they secretly racist? I'll tell you in a moment, but first, 2 stories about racism in other cities. Bear with me for a moment. So this black police officer from Bridgeport, Connecticut, named Clive Higgins, reported that he found a racist letter on police letterhead in his office mailbox. He reported it as a hate crime. I won't read much of it to you, just a few lines. White power! Officer Clive Higgins doesn't belong here in this police department. These black officers belong in the toilet. Chief Cadet and Assistant Chief Nardozzi don't want them here, especially Officer Higgins. He doesn't have a key to the building. That's a big red flag. The letter goes on a bit. Does it strike you as a bit weird, though? I mean, is that how racists talk? It seems pretty specific. And the racist part, it's racist. But if you're a real racist, is that what you say? White power, black officers to the toilet? It goes on like that. It just doesn't ring true. It's awfully specific about Officer Clive Higgins' human resources issues and that he doesn't have a key. Well, the Bridgeport Guardians, a minority rights group of black officers, they had a news conference about this letter. They got behind him. The racism at the police department had to stop. And Officer Higgins said that letter made him truly fear for his life. Okay, but investigators checked surveillance cameras at the police station. They saw Officer Higgins himself typing and printing up documents, going into the room where he said he found this letter, and then showing him coming out of that room, but talking and smiling happily with people. So not exactly looking like he was afraid for his life. When investigators showed him those closed-circuit videos, Higgins admitted he made the whole thing up. But really, what are you going to do? Would you really say the letter wasn't racist, or say it sounded awfully weird? Say it sure sounded like a setup? But let's say you're a white police chief. Even if you're skeptical of the letter, doesn't saying so make you look racist, even if you weren't racist? Clive Higgins is a terrible man. He smeared his fellow cops as racist. Worse than that, he planted a seed of doubt in many people's minds for the next time someone cries racism. Is it another hoax? Is it another case of the little shepherd who falsely cried wolf? So now if there really is a case of racism at that police station, will people believe it? Maybe this will inspire other hoaxes too. It's just awful what he did. I want to show you one more case, and then I'll get to Calgary, and maybe you'll see the connection. A few weeks ago, in a wealthy neighborhood northwest of Dallas named Corinth, let me just show you. There's a complaint made by Dorothy Bland, a black professor at the University of North Texas. She says she was walking on the street like she normally does, her morning walk, and a couple of white cops, quote, caught her walking while black, unquote. Now, she's the dean of journalism, actually, so a prestigious woman, an accomplished woman, a wealthy woman who is being picked on. Here's a letter that she wrote in the Dallas News, quote, flashing lights and sirens from a police vehicle interrupted a routine Saturday morning walk in my golf course community in Corinth. Like most African Americans, I am familiar with the phrase driving while black. But was I really being stopped for walking on the street in my own neighborhood? Knowing that the police officers are typically armed with guns and are a lot bigger than my 5 feet 4 inches, I had no interest in my life story playing out like Trayvon Martin's death. I stopped and asked the 2 officers if there was a problem. I don't remember getting a decent answer before one of the officers asked me where I lived and for identification. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole letter. She's a journalism dean, so you can imagine it went on quite long. But here's one more part. She said she took a photo of the cops and, quote, for safety's sake, I posted the photo of the officers on Facebook, And within hours, more than 100 Facebook friends spread the news from New York to California. You are now in the company of Henry Louis Gates and others with the same experience, wrote one of my former students from Florida. We must stop racial profiling. Okay, again, does that strike you as a real story? That a couple of white cops harassed a professor on her morning walk in a rich neighborhood with flashing lights and sirens? But again, maybe it's true. Maybe she was racially profiled. Even if it sounds a little over the top, I mean, it could be true. And by making her personal grievance a public matter, she sort of changed the test. Now it's not how you react to what really happened, it's how you react to what she says that counts. You have to respond to her accusation on its own, not the underlying facts. Whether or not a racist incident happened, a racist incident will happen if you don't tell her she's a victim. Now, the Corinth Police Department has won awards for being amongst the best run in Texas. There are 2,400 different police forces in Texas. Remember, the place is almost as populous as Canada. And Corinth is one of only 33 police departments in the state to be recognized twice for excellence by the state's police chiefs on 165 different measurements, including how they protect citizens' rights, the proper use of force. So these guys are by the book. And by these guys, I mean these guys and gals. They have a young woman police chief, and she seems very progressive. But still, who are you going to believe? A black professor said she was racially profiled, scared with sirens, picked on for being black. You got two choices here. Believe her story or be called a racist. Except there's just one thing, as many police forces do these days, they record all their interactions with citizens. And so Corinth's police chief replied to the Dallas News and sent them the police video. With a cover letter, here's an excerpt from the chief's letter. She said, "My officers observed Miss Bland walking in the roadway, wearing earbuds, and unaware that there was a pickup truck directly behind her that had to almost come to a complete stop to avoid hitting her. The driver of the truck looked at the officers as they passed and held his hands in the air, which implied, 'Aren't you going to do something about this?' The officers turned around and drove behind Miss Bland. They activated their in-car video camera, which shows her again walking in the roadway, impeding traffic. They activated their emergency lights. No siren was ever sounded. They exited their patrol vehicle and contacted Miss Bland." Okay, now instead of reading the next part of her letter, I'm just going to show you the video. Here, take a look.
The reason why we're coming here to talk to you, just when you're walking up this way, make sure you're walking on this side of the road, because I don't know if you noticed, there was a truck that pretty much had to go to a stop because you understand you're working out and stuff.
Yeah.
But just make sure you're on this side, that way you can see, because you're impeding traffic, for one, and two, it's a safety issue. We don't want you to get hit. You know, somebody's not, because you can see people coming this way and you can jump out of the way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you, on this side, someone come back and hit you and not even see you. And you won't even know what hit you. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So completely friendly, completely calm, no sirens, a woman with earphones in, jogging, can't hear traffic, prancercising down the middle of the street instead of on the two sidewalks. Race never comes up. She was never issued a ticket. They couldn't have been friendlier. She was the one obviously looking to troll an issue here, take photos, make up a story, make a name for herself. She's a journalism professor, but she doesn't know the police record their interactions. So she thought she could get away with a lie, a racism hoax. Which brings me to the news from Calgary. Anti-Muslim graffiti in a city that has elected a Muslim mayor twice. Last time was 73% of the vote. So this is the graffiti that was reported. F Syrian refs. Syrian refs? F Muslim goofs. Muslim? F Syria. Look, spelled wrong too. Except it was also spelled right over here. F Syrian refs. Is that how real racists talk? Calling people they hate goofs? And what's with that symbol, that cross in a circle, a Celtic cross? Is this some Irish rights group in Calgary? Some obscure U.S. groups do use the Celtic cross as a white nationalist symbol. Is this real? Reads a lot like Clive Higgins' fake note, doesn't it? Now, again, it could be true. It could be that anti-Muslim racists, of which there has never been one seen in Calgary before, it could be that they went to a transit station and painted some cars and spelled Muslims wrong, and they spelled Syria right once and spelled Syria wrong once, and called them goofs. I mean, could be. Or maybe it's a case of Clive Higgins, a case of Dorothy Bland, a hoax designed to engender sympathy against a fake threat, to switch the public perception of danger away from Muslim terrorists towards what, some Irish anti-Muslim gang that no one has ever seen or heard before? So these people, these racists, are so obsessed by Muslims that they don't know how to spell that word. Really? Well, we're told that Calgary Transit has a lot of security cameras on site. It will be interesting to see what's on those cameras. Who knows? Maybe this is real. Or maybe it's not. But it's already served its purpose, hasn't it? Switch the subject away from Muslim terrorists, like the ones who just murdered 14 people in Los Angeles, away from Muslim terrorists who just murdered more than 100 in Paris, away from 50,000 Muslim migrants who are streaming into Canada over the next 12 months. Yeah, that's the new quota, just so you know, 50,000. Switch the subject away from real risks, proven risks, to graffiti in the dead of night. Is it a hoax? I don't know. But that's not the point. You're supposed to react to the hoax like it's real. That's the politically correct test. It'll be interesting if Calgary Transit and the police choose to release the video footage or not. I think that might tell us part of the answer indirectly, don't you think? Last point, Naheed Nenshi, the Muslim mayor of Calgary, my old debating partner from college, he jumped on this story, of course, because he has two political bases, downtown hipster liberals and Muslim voters, of whom there are almost 100,000 in Calgary. He tweeted about this graffiti yesterday. He hasn't gone to town on it yet, but he tweeted about it. He knows it's gold for him. He's the mayor of Canada's least racially conscious city, but he profits from accusations of racism because he can put his opponents on the back foot, like Clive Higgins and Dorothy Bland tried to do. Nenshi did that during the federal election campaign, where he accused people who don't like the face-obscuring Muslim veil called a niqab, people who don't want to see that in citizenship court. He implied they were racist. He implied Jason Kenney was racist for opposing the niqab. That stimulates Nenshi's electoral base and puts his opponents on the defensive. But it's a form of a hoax, isn't it? So Nenshi tweeted this graffiti, which is remarkable only in that last year, when there was a full-out Muslim riot in Calgary, where Muslim men beat up a Jewish family so badly it sent them to hospital, Mayor Nenshi didn't say a word, not one tweet, not one press release. Oh, and neither did the Calgary Police Service. They didn't investigate a hate crime then. They didn't put out a call to identify the rioters then. See, actual Muslims actually rioting, Syria style, that hurts the official narrative. But questionable graffiti against Muslims found at night, well, that's great for the official narrative. The media party is in collusion with this, by the way. Quick example, last night some guy on Twitter was freaking out about the graffiti, and the Calgary Herald immediately reached out to him to write a story about him. It's going to be a whole thing in the Herald, apparently. Calgary's racist. Calgary's anti-Muslim. We're all too mean to Syrian refugees. It's the Irish or whoever that's the problem. Please stop talking about Muslim terrorism. I remember that reporter in question, Emily Stark. Her Twitter bio says, it's incredible, she says she's a feminist killjoy, a proud member of the media party. I appreciate her honesty. She's not a reporter. She's a leftist hack, an activist, and one of the reasons why the Calgary Herald is bleeding viewers. People don't want propaganda pretending to be news, and Stark really doesn't even pretend anymore, does she? So Stark wants an interview about this anti-Muslim graffiti, spelled wrong, spelled Syria two different ways, spelled Muslim. There's so many things about it, so iffy. But I remember when Emily Stark was downtown Calgary a year or so ago at that Muslim protest where they were chanting Heil Hitler. Remember this?
Heil Hitler! Heil Hitler!
So that's not a rumor. That's not an iffy graffiti in the dead of night. That is a real group of real Muslims really chanting Heil Hitler towards a group of real Jews, really right at City Hall, with the cops and journalists there too. That's news. That's incredible news. But Emily Stark, activist first, reporter second, knew not to report it because it's against the official narrative. Here's what she wrote when she was standing right there. She wrote, "Pro-Palestinian supporters are here across the street. Tensions rising. They're shouting things I shouldn't tweet." Well, chanting Heil Hitler isn't pro-Palestinian, Emily. It's anti-Semitic, it's Jew hatred by Muslims. I love that phrase, tensions rising. It's so passive. Who was rising that tension? Was it the Jews raising the tensions by being shouted at? And that last part there, they're shouting things I shouldn't tweet. Why? Because you don't like to report Muslim racism, but anti-Muslim graffiti that's obviously of dubious provenance, you actually reach out to run out to report it? Why, sure you do. If you're with the media party, if you're a propagandist who literally refuses to report news in front of your face if it paints Muslim men as risky, but rushes out to report graffiti to indict an entire city as racist. One day, I fear Calgary will have a terrorist attack. I hope it won't, but I think it will. We know that there are radical mosques in Calgary, mosques funded by Saudi Arabia. We know that there are terrorists who have gone from Calgary to join the Islamic State terrorist group in Syria and Iraq. We have seen with our own eyes the Heil Hitler chants, and we have seen the actual riots that sent Jews to hospital. In a way, terrorism has already come to Calgary. But when it comes in a hail of bullets, not just a hail of anti-Semitism and a hail of fists, you'll be able to count on Calgary's mayor and police and compliant media to do their best to deracinate it, to hide its true nature and true meaning, and immediately pivot to the real victims, Muslims on Twitter who might face a backlash. Stay watching. More after these words.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know TheRebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to TheRebel.media/store to find out more.
Welcome back to the program. Although we're here in Toronto, we follow with great interest the forced collectivization of farms in Alberta. That's really what it's about. It's being done in the name of, quote, worker safety by the NDP government, which is bizarre to have a government in Alberta that does not have a single farmer or rancher or oilman in it. That would be like having a government in Newfoundland that no one had ever set foot on a fishing boat. That's how bizarre the NDP government is. Chock full of union organizers, though, including the husband of the Premier. His name is Lou Arab. He's the husband of Rachel Notley. He is a senior union organizer with CUPE, and most of the cabinet have a background in union organizing. So, too, with the Chief of Staff of the Premier's office, Brian Topp. So it is no surprise that they are attempting to unionize the last bastion of truly free industry in Alberta, namely the family farm. Well, let's talk to someone who actually works in agriculture. Her name is Alison Clapton, and she runs an equestrian center just outside Lethbridge in the town of Warner. Nice to see you via Skype. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Ezra. It's a pleasure to be here, and a pleasure to be able to represent, our community, our agricultural community.
Well, thank you. I mean, we have Sheila Gunn-Reid, who is just crisscrossing Alberta, going to farmers' rallies. You're not quite a farm, not quite a ranch. You basically raise horses. But I think your story is emblematic of so many farmers and ranchers. Basically, it's a family business, and it's not just a business. It's everything. It's what you do. It's what you love. It's where you live. It's what your kids do. It's what your family does. To unionize you, which is what this law would do, would basically destroy your entire way of life. Am I wrong?
It most certainly will have a huge impact. As far as my family farm goes, we don't have any set employees. We are a community of people that come out from the city and bring their kids out and take riding lessons and learn the ways of the farm and learn how to be around horses and what it is to be out in the country and be able to enjoy those parts of life.
But that's my point. You don't have formal employees because your husband and your 3 kids, and I think your youngest is 5, because they're your, quote, employees. But here's what's so terrifying about this law. It either bans kids or family or volunteers or requires you to union, and it's not even clear of how it would do that. So the very fact that you are a family company, that would be illegal because you can't have 5-year-olds working in a labor law environment. That's against child labor laws. You can't work more than 35 hours a week without paying overtime. Your neighbors can't come over and help you if a foal is being born, because that's, volunteer. So everything that you take for granted as normal country living is now going to be run through union offices. That's what's so terrifying, is everything you've just described about your normal life is going to be vaporized.
Well, it is certainly scary, and I just want to say the biggest problem, or what our farmers in this community is basically what we're so worried about is how this bill is being brought into play. How it really has not. It's not going through the proper process of what a bill would do. So rather than consulting with us farmers about how this bill should be written and the components with which it should be made up of, is not being asked to the people that it affects the most. It's really vague. We have a really vague understanding of what this bill actually means. So that's what's driving our farmers to be so upset about this. It's not that we don't agree with safety issues. It's not that we don't agree that there should be coverages. It's just the way the bill is being presented that we are having the biggest issues with.
Well, I mean, that's obviously part of it, passing a law by sneak attack, by ambush, passing the law first, having consultations later. And I've seen some of these consultations held in tiny forums, deliberately chosen to be small, deliberately chosen to be inconvenient, not in areas where many farmers are. I've seen these sham consultations, but I got to be honest with you, Alison, if you had the most wonderful, expansive, easy to attend, lengthy consultations ever created, that wouldn't change what the goal is here. The goal is it's not safety, by the way. What does a 35-hour work week or banning children from working or banning volunteers from working, what's that got to do with safety? I know it's got to do with union organizing. And I think that the NDP have done a couple things here. They've done a sneak attack on the process side, but part of that is so that farmers don't discover the insanity that's coming. I saw a sign at one of these NDP forums where there was actually a question. Is there a certain time of year where a strike might hurt your company? Yeah, like maybe harvest time. So I think there's two things, Alison. There's the sneak attack, but there's the substance of the bill that they're trying to hide. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I personally don't really know anything about unions. I have no idea how they work or how they would go about that. I mean, as for me, what our biggest concern is just the fact that we have for them to implement workers' compensation on all of us kind of takes away from the fact that there's a lot of these farmers out here that do have good insurance coverages and good plans and benefit plans for their workers, and with this government right now, they're planning to take that away from the workers, from the employees, and make it so that they will be covered by workers' compensation, which only covers them during their hours of operation. These other coverages or these other insurance plans and premiums that these farmers are paying cover them 24 hours a day, 24/7. So 365 days a year. So these employees will be compromised.
Well, it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, let me ask you one last question. I know that your whole family gets involved, even the littlest one, because it's fun and it's the way of life. Is there anything you are doing now that would change in terms of safety or what you have your own family do because some union boss in Edmonton passes a law? I mean, it's such a bizarre question to ask, but I want to hear your answer. I mean, you don't just love your job, you love your kids and your family. You wouldn't send them to do dangerous things just because some union boss at Edmonton passes a law, either it's a labor law or a workers' comp law. I mean, you care more about your own kids than some union boss anyways. Really, is there anything you would do if they passed the law for your own children's protection that you're not doing now?
No, I mean, my children absolutely love being on the farm, and we talk about safety and how they need to act and behave around horses all the time. Yeah. And with everything that we do, I mean, whether we're around the tractor, they know they're not allowed to be anywhere near a tractor when it's running. They know they're not allowed to run out into areas where work is taking place. I mean, we do make sure that our children are safe, and I mean, nobody, like you say, nobody wants to have their children injured or farm workers injured or anybody for that matter. I mean,
well, maybe if the unions in Edmonton send down a farm site supervisor to stand around your house all day, things will be safer. Of course, I'm kidding around. Alison, thank you so much for joining us via Skype. You keep up the fight out there. We'll do our best out here.
Thank you very much, Ezra.
Thank you. Stay with us, folks. After the break, we talk about Rachel Notley's war on oil. Stay with us.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to TheRebel.media/TheMegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
Welcome back to the program. You're watching the Ezra Levant Show. One of the things I've been following with great interest and alarm is the carbon tax sprung on the province of Alberta by Rachel Notley. It is a massive tax, really as large as the GST is for that province, and it wasn't part of her campaign platform. Even worse, it wasn't done through wide consultations. And over the last 2 days, we've seen something even darker. An exclusive report by Claudia Catania in the Financial Post over the last 2 days has shown that there were secret negotiations between 4 of the largest oil sands tycoons and 4 anti-oil lobbyists, not even from Alberta in the case of 3 of them, that struck a deal behind the scenes, and that was the carbon tax rules that Rachel Notley brought into force. A private deal, not done in the legislature, not in committees, but between 4 tycoons and 4 anti-oil activists. Just unbelievable. Well, joining me now from Calgary via Skype is Glen Schmidt, the CEO of Laricina Energy, not one of the 4 tycoons, not the biggest guy on the block, but an oil sands operator nonetheless who's concerned about these things. Mr. Schmidt, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Well, thank you, and I want to ask you, what I've just described is based on my own observations and what I've read in the Financial Post. But if that reporting is accurate, and it seems to be, both Murray Edwards and Ed Winningham of the Penman Institute say it's accurate, that this deal, this carbon tax, this cap on emissions, the amount of the tax, who pays what, was cooked up basically in a crony system. 4 guys helped tilt the rules in their own favor. Is that an accurate assessment of what's happened here?
Well, I can't confirm what may have happened that isn't in the public domain, but what I can say is we do have concerns with respect to how the carbon budget, and I'm going to use that vocabulary, is allocated, because I think, as you've observed, 4 large companies, including multinationals, have a view that it's acceptable to them, but the allocation of carbon, how it will be fairly allocated, some of the details that are coming out in terms of what benefits might accrue to facilities or projects that are deemed to be top quartile leave us in a position that we have no idea of how level the playing field is.
Let me dig into that a bit. There's a University of Calgary economics professor named Trevor Tomby. I follow him on Twitter. He did a chart showing that in the first year of this tax, $6 billion will be collected, $3 billion of which will go back to the big companies. And he had a second chart showing that some companies won't be paying any money at all. Some will be paying $1, $2, $3, $4 a barrel. But some of the big companies will be making money. They'll be making $1 a barrel off the carbon tax. And again, these details are hard to extract from the government. But if this University of Calgary economist, who seems very nonpartisan to me, if he's accurate, Mr. Schmidt, these 4 guys who got in on the deal, who stood next to Rachel Notley, they've rigged the game so they actually get paid. Is that your assessment?
I have not seen the report from the University of Calgary. I do understand, for example, that Shell, who is a European-based company with a European-based outlook, has, through the CCS project, extra credits. And if the extra credit deals that have existed in the past or may exist in the future result in a benefit that is either not fairly applied or is specific to those companies, I mean, clearly we all will have concerns.
So what you're saying is Shell, which is an Anglo-Dutch consortium, it's one of the super majors, as they're called, it's not headquartered in Canada. We're a branch plant to them. I mean, they don't care about us any more than they care about Nigeria or Iraq, and that's fine. I mean, they do employ great Albertans and they do great work. But like you say, their headquarters is in London and Holland. And if they get billions of dollars of credit for some scheme they have, but you, I mean, let's just talk a little bit about Laricina. I'm not that familiar with you guys. How big are you? How many employees do you have? You're based in Calgary, obviously. How many barrels a day do you produce? And you're not going to get any of these green schemes for a rebate, are you? Tell me a little bit about Laricina.
Well, Laricina is an oil sands developer. Given the price of crude, we've had to shut in our operations. But the scale of our development is significant. We're the leading developer of a new play called the Grossmont Carbonates, which is the next largest oil play in Canada. And we've done all the piloting work, including at a field level. Our concern is how are we going to have fair rules applied? Is all the work that we've done, is the development of the projects that I've just described going to receive a fair allocation of the carbon budget? Or, as you framed, are we in a situation where deals that are not visible to us, or allocations of carbon within the budget, or credits, or deemed levels of performance are not being equally applied? So we have a long list of questions that necessarily have to be answered.
Well, I tell you, the Energy Minister of Alberta gave a bit of a hint the other day when she said, well, oil workers can just go to British Columbia until this storm passes. So I think that's the best answer you're going to get from the NDP. But let me remark on something that I find quite strange that is becoming normalized. You are an oil man. I'm not that familiar with your background. A lot of oil men are either from the geology side or the finance side. They're entrepreneurs. But here you are talking about made-up things like pixie dust, carbon credits, carbon budgets. That's not how you produce oil and gas. That's not how you make employment. This is all fictitious, the right to produce carbon. You already go out there and figure out the geology and the exploration and the production and the logistics, but now you are wasting your time and how many regulatory and lobbyist and lawyer dollars trying to figure out some game. It's like Enron accounting that everyone's being forced to play in. Am I misinterpreting things here? I mean, none of this has anything to do with actually producing oil, making jobs, making money. It's all a scheme that insiders are gaming. Am I wrong?
Well, it's probably not quite as simple as that. Clearly, carbon taxation is a fundamental issue that the government has taken a position on. Fair enough. And quite frankly, I think carbon taxation is a better than the cap and trade. It at least gives a visible definition of what the tax is, and the government on an ongoing basis will be held accountable for its application and its distribution. That's not a bad thing.
But you've been capped anyways. The oil sands have a hard cap of 110 megatons. So you've got the worst of both worlds. You've got the carbon
Having
tax.
a hard cap, I agree with you. Having a hard cap where we're in a position that we don't know how it will be allocated or whether it will be allocated fairly is a major concern. An example of this was the regulations put in place for environmental monitoring. There's $50 million a year budget. the large companies have sent the cost to all companies. So all companies are expected to equally participate. Fair enough. But in managing the system, we're now seeing a risk where they're asking us to contribute costs, but not fairly allocating the benefits with respect to the carbon budget or the cap that you're talking about. So there are very real concerns of equity.
Well, they're saving themselves. They cut a deal. It's like Stockholm Syndrome. They're sort of, it's a version of that. They made a choice. Those four companies, Suncor, Shell, CNRL, and Cenovus, they've decided if they throw their lot in with Rachel Notley and the carbon tax and the four anti-oil lobbyists, they can game the system enough to survive. And the little guys like Laricina, well, who cares? Last question for you. You're in the markets. You're trying to raise money. What do people around the world, what do investors in New York City, in London, England say? They've got $1 billion they're going to put into oil. Are they going to Texas, North Dakota, even Russia, even Nigeria, even Iraq? Is the world's investors saying, yeah, we're going to take a break on Alberta until you figure it out? Or are they still saying, no, Alberta's a great place to invest? You tell me.
Clearly, investors are taking a break. They need clarity on the royalty. They need clarity on the carbon regulation. And where they necessarily have a concern, if it costs more to produce in Canada, Canada has a carbon tax and the U.S. does not. The U.S. then has a competitive advantage, and the U.S. will continue to attract capital and jobs, and Alberta may not.
Last question for you, Mr. Schmidt. You're very generous with your time. How many employees has Laricina laid off this year?
Unfortunately, we've had to let go approximately 160 people.
I'm very sorry about that, and my heart goes out to them. I know that's not a decision you made with any happiness. You want to grow. But I understand that in this terrible environment where the NDP is piling taxes and regulations on a low oil price, that's the reality for tens of thousands of Albertans. I wish you good luck, and I thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
That's Glen Schmidt, the CEO of Laricina Energy. Stay with us after the break. Your letters to me.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
Time for your feedback. Colin from Alberta writes about the problems as NDP. I and many of my friends are totally disgusted with our NDP government and many of its policies, the most egregious being their new tax on everything, aka carbon tax, and the green shaft on electricity. Despite what I feel is widespread anger about these policies, they're going to go ahead without any real opposition. When the farmers and ranchers were angry about Bill 6, they protested en masse, and the government blinked. We need to do the same thing against the carbon tax. Can you help organize a march on the legislature? I remember back in the day when oilfield services companies demonstrated on the legislature grounds against the NEP. It helped turn the tide in that fight. I look forward to hearing your views. Well, thanks for your letter. Bill 6 is being rammed through. Despite these strong grassroots farmers' protests, I think the farmers will eventually win. They will do anything to preserve their way of life. It's just so much more integral to their identity than just a job. The trouble on the oil side is that, first of all, for many Albertans, oil and gas, it's a job. It's not a way of life passed on from generation to generation. It's not where you live. Farmers live on the farm, work with their neighbors, do fun things like rodeos and fairs and 4-H. That's all related to farming. A lot of oil and gas is just a job for people. I'm not saying for everybody. Some people truly, deeply love it, but I don't think there's the same realization that the NDP is an existential threat to the entire industry or an entire way of life. Second, the NDP's war on oil is less brutally obvious. Bill 6, that I call the Farm Collectivization Act, it's clear. They seek to destroy family farming. They will literally ban children or volunteers from working on a farm. But the NDP's war on oil is less clearly evident that it's motivated by the same hate. It's a tax here, a tax there, a royalty review here, a global warming review there. They say they want oil and gas to survive, and some people actually believe them or are anesthetized by that, but no one believes for one moment that that the NDP wants to save family farms. I mean, just no one buys it. And finally, on the oil side, you have oil and gas companies, at least 4 big ones, including the perpetual sellouts at Suncor and Shell, but now joined by Cenovus and CNRL, standing up and saying, yeah, we like what Rachel Notley's doing. So that confuses things more. So to sum up, you have oil and gas jobs that are being lost in dribs and drabs. And people don't quite understand why. The media is spinning full-time that it's just world oil prices, so don't blame the NDP. And the NDP themselves say, oh, they don't want to kill oil and gas. Oh, they want to get it to market. And some people believe them, and the media sure does. And finally, you have senior oil and gas leaders say, oh, everything's great. We love this tax. None of that applies to farming, you see. No one trusts the NDP if you're a farmer. No one's siding with the NDP, no farm leader. Everyone knows this will be the end of their way of life. That's the difference. But I think it's up to us to help light that fire under the oil patch to fight back. And we're starting to. We're doing our part through stopthecarbontax.com and more campaigns to come. By the way, our 2,500 lawn signs will roll out of the factory on Monday. So they're going to start making their way through the province. If you haven't signed up yet, go to stopthecarbontax.com, sign up for a sign, and we will get it to you next week. Okay, next letter. Dan writes, Ezra, the guests you have on the Ezra Levant show have been amazing. The topic's pertinent, amazingly interesting and informative. You're hitting up there with the big guys. Hey, that's pretty friendly of you to say. Thank you for that. We sometimes have mainstream guests, like we had Michelle Rempel on the other day, a conservative critic. But sometimes we have people who the other media ignores. Remember when we had that dairy farmer, Michael Schmidt, on, whose farm was raided? By the way, I've talked to Sonia Schickman, the lawyer in that case. We just got to connect a few things, and we'll fight back on this. So sometimes we have obscure people that the mainstream media ignores, but they shouldn't be obscure. They should be important stories. So we're going to do a balance. We want to compete with the big guys in some ways on the big stories, but we also want to tell stories that they're ignoring completely. Okay, Frank writes, I can no longer even bear to watch the CBC for 1 minute. The Globe and Mail has banned me from the comment section. Even though I disagree with you folks on a few things, I love your unabashed anti-PC speak. And for this, I hope your media empire grows. Count me in as a fan. I might even be inclined to contribute to this scribbling section if you folks are interested. Well, that's pretty friendly. Thank you. Listen, it is impossible to agree with me on 100% of things. I mean, do you think even my wife agrees with me on 100% of things? No two human beings agree with each other 100% of the time. I don't even agree with Brian Lilly on everything. I'm having trouble thinking of what I disagree with him on, but I'm sure we have areas we disagree on. That's okay. And in our comment section, we let an even broader disagreement happen. We don't like profanity and obscenity, but we're going to keep our comment section. We're not like the CBC or the Globe and Mail, because at our core, we love free speech. And the other side, they claim to, but their authoritarian streak, that speaks louder. Okay, here's some hate mail now from Rob. I don't want to hear about every fart, Ezra. You're nitpicking. Okay, I'm not sure what that means. The only farts I tend to talk about are cow farts, and the only reason I talk about cow farts is because I know you think this is crazy, but I swear it's true. Global warming extremists, they are worried that cow farts and belching, which cows do and other ruminants, is causing global warming. So they really don't know what to do. And that's how crazy they are. They would rather deal with the threat of cow farts than real threats to human life like the Islamic State. It's their safe place dealing with cow farts. I only talk about it to mock it. Well, listen, I thought it was a great week. I appreciate your viewership. We had some super guests. We're punching as hard as we can, whether it's the carbon tax or Bill 6, the Farm Collectivization Act, or Brian's great reporting on the refugee issue, or Justin Trudeau just backing up the truck and loading all the entitlements in. I think more and more our motto is the other side of the story. You know what I mean? Go to the CBC, go to the Globe and Mail, go to the Toronto Star and get mad, I do, but then come to us for the other side of the story on things like this LA terrorist attack. Sorry, no, it's not workplace violence. Sorry, no, it wasn't a right-wing militia. Sorry, when an ISIS, Islamic State terrorist comes to the United States from Pakistan through Saudi Arabia and commits a murder spree, you don't take it out on law-abiding U.S. gun owners. I mean, that is a liberal's reaction. Come to us for the other side of the story. Hey, keep in touch over the weekend by Facebook, by Twitter. Send us an email, Ezra at TheRebel.media, or just make a comment right underneath the page. Make sure you share us on Facebook. Unlike the CBC, we don't get $1 billion a year to market ourselves. We rely on word of mouth. That means you. On behalf of everyone here at TheRebel.media, have a great weekend. Keep clicking over the weekend, and I'll see you in the Ezra Levant Show back on Monday. Bye-bye.